thought that fall would finish me, didn't you? You watched the ground take me like a grave with no name. You watched the light leave my eyes and called it justice. You didn't offer a hand. You offered a smile. I remember the sound before I remember the pain. Boots scraping concrete. Laughter cut short into whispers. A breath held by a crowd that wanted blood, but settled for bones. They gathered like moths to a house fire, not to help, to warm their hands on my collapse. You loved the theater of it, a man breaking in public, a man who believed, a man who trusted. You loved how the world pauses for a downfall, but never stops for a resurrection. You loved how the noise swells when a king stumbles and a throne looks empty. You didn't stab me in the chest. You stabbed me in the back and waited for me to confess it was my fault. That's how you work. Soft words, hard edges. You feed the hope. Then you cut the rope. And you call the drop truth. I tasted iron, rubble in my teeth. Vision swimming in shadows that smelled like old smoke and cheap victory. Faces leaned in, not to see if I'd live, to confirm that I'd die slowly. You whispered lies like prayers. He won't get up. He wasn't built for this. He talked like a king, but he bleeds like a peasant. You wanted me to hear. I did. The world loves a man breaking because it absolves it of courage. No one has to face their own cowardice when mine is on display. No one has to lift themselves when they can point at me and say, at least I didn't fall that far. So they measured their worth by my wounds. They took photographs with their eyes. You swore to, while scraping their statues for coin. I learned your geometry, where trust becomes leverage, where leverage becomes a drop. The vultures circled, professional mourners with cameras for eyes. They prefer their meat tenderized by rumor. They prefer their kings without crowns, their lions without teeth, their men without mothers. They kept their distance. Vultures know when a thing is not dead yet. They hover and place bets. I lay there long enough to inventory every face that looked away. The friends who didn't see. The brothers who didn't hear. The lovers who didn't feel. Absence is a census. Silence counts better than any accountant. I pressed my palm to the ground that took me. It pulsed back like a drum before war. like a heart that learned thunder. I understood. The earth wasn't a grave. It was a forge. Heat without flame. Weight without chains. You mistook my breath for surrender because you never learned the sound of patience. Patience is a blade cooling in water. Quiet, merciless, inevitable. Patience eats mockery for protein. Patience remembers. Every word you said folded into a seed. Cold, hard, small. Seeds disappear before they conquer the field. The fool thinks disappearance is death. The wise know it's a map. You celebrated too early. You popped the cork before the wine had a name. You held a funeral for a man who hadn't decided whether to die. You sold tickets. You sold stories. You sold me short. The pavement kept my confession. I'm not embarrassed to say it. The ground hurt more than your knife because it told the truth. The ground doesn't lie. Smirked. The day you whispered. The day you let winter do your talking. That day did not end me. It appointed me. I won't announce the rest. I won't send invitations. I won't warn you when the ground starts remembering my footsteps. I'll let the silence carry the message you taught me to write. I'm not here to explain. I'm not here to defend. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I am here to breathe, to stand, to gather every shard you tried to sweep into the gutter, to weigh them in my hands until they feel like weapons. You thought the fall was the story. It was the preface. I get up now. Not because you didn't want me to. Because you needed me not to. I'll give you this much mercy. No speeches. No warnings. No begging for space you already surrendered. I rise. And I do not look back. You wore loyalty like a mask, but the eyes behind it were knives. You called yourself brother. You called yourself ally. You called yourself love. But every title was a sheath hiding the blade. You smiled while carving me open. And that smile, it haunts more than the wound. Because it told me the cut was not an accident. It was a choice. It was joy. The enemy outside my walls never scared me. They shout, they curse. They show their steel in daylight. But you You whispered promises at dusk and drew blood at midnight. You called it truth. You called it lesson. I call it betrayal. You weren't satisfied with bruises. You wanted collapse. You wanted silence thick enough to choke on. You wanted me crawling, asking why. But I didn't ask. Because deep down, I knew the answer. Betrayal is not about me. It's about you. Your envy. Your fear. Your hunger for my ruin to taste like your victory. I let you close. I gave you keys, maps, blueprints of my soul. And you weaponized every one. You didn't need to storm my gates. You opened the doors I gave you. You walked in with my trust in one hand and my destruction in the other. That is the truth of betrayal. It is not the knife in the back. It is the moment before the stab, when you believe the embrace is real. It is the warmth of a hand that means to kill. I bled, not on the ground, inside, where no one could see, where no doctor could reach. And you watched, not with guilt, with pride. You thought pain would bury me. You thought it would suffocate me, drown me, choke every spark left inside. But pain does not bury kings. It baptizes them. Every night I lay in the dark, I felt the weight of your blade echoing in my chest. The wound was not flesh. It was faith torn open. And faith bleeds longer than blood. But in that bleeding, something happened. I began to hear a voice. Not yours, not theirs, mine. It whispered through the cracks of broken ribs. Endure. Pain became my instructor. Not kind, not patient, not soft. It spoke with fists. It lectured with scars. It tested with silence. And I learned that comfort lies. Comfort tells you the world is safe, that trust is unbreakable, that promises have weight. But pain never lies. Pain tells you what people really are. Pain strips masks from faces. Pain burns away illusions until only iron remains. You thought my screams were weakness, but screams are the alphabet of strength. each one a letter, each one a lesson. Until finally, the screaming stopped. Not because the pain ended, but because I became fluent in its language. I stared into mirrors that no longer showed me. Eyes cracked with shadows, jaw clenched into silence. Every fracture in the reflection was a roadmap, a map that led out of who I was into who I was becoming. You thought pain would make me smaller. It expanded me. You thought it would hollow me out. It filled me with fire. You thought it would silence me. It gave me words written in blood. You thought my absence was defeat. You mistook my silence for surrender. But silence is not death. Silence is strategy. I disappeared, not because I was gone, because I was building. Because I learned that the loudest roar means nothing without the storm to back it. You waited for me to beg. You waited for me to explain. You waited for me to justify the fall. But no words came. Because words are wasted on traitors. So I gave you nothing. And nothing became everything. In silence, I trained. In silence, I bled. In silence, I stitched every wound into a banner. You didn't see it, but every day I vanished, I was engraving my name into the marrow of tomorrow. Silence is a shield. It blocks the noise of cowards who call themselves kings. It blocks the venom of whispers. It blocks the poison of doubt. Behind that shield, I stood still long enough for the fire to grow teeth. Silence is a blade, sharper than any insult, any rumor, any dagger slipped between ribs. It cuts in ways you don't notice until you're already bleeding. Every moment I stayed quiet, I was carving your arrogance open. Silence is a forge. In that darkness, I burned. Not out, through. Every ounce of humiliation melted down. Every ember of rage hammered into steel. Until what was left was not the man who fell, but the storm you didn't see coming. You laughed too soon. You celebrated too loudly. You thought the game was over. But silence does not end games. It resets them. I let you think you'd won. I let you relax in your throne of lies. I let you sip from your cup of hollow victory. Because when you thought silence meant I was finished, but silence was where the fire began. In the ashes of betrayal, I found the forge. Every scar became scripture. Every bruise became blueprint. Every drop of sweat became prophecy. You laughed while I fell, but I rose in places you could not see. In dark gyms with no applause. In nights where walls were my only audience. In mornings when the sun hadn't risen, but I had. I turned pain into discipline, rage into rhythm, fire into fuel. You think strength is a gift. It isn't. Strength is a debt paid in agony. Strength is forged when no one claps, no one helps, no one stays. And I paid in full. Every rep was revenge. Every set was a sentence. Every drop of blood was a down payment on the crown. While you slept, I built. While you feasted, I fasted. While you forgot me, I forged myself into iron. You thought I would crawl. I learned to climb. You thought I would drown. I taught myself to breathe fire underwater. Transformation is not pretty. It's not calm. It's not gentle. It is violent. It is fire-consuming weakness. It is rage sharpened into discipline. You will never understand what it means to rise from nothing. Because you've never had to drag yourself out of hell with bare hands. You've never bled into the dirt just to stand again. You've never screamed into silence and heard silence scream back. But I have. And it changed me. The body you tried to bury is now armored in scars. The soul you tried to break is now welded in steel. The silence you mistook for surrender is now my kingdom's anthem. I didn't rise for peace. I didn't rise for forgiveness. I didn't rise to prove you wrong. I rose for the throne. You thought you buried me beneath the fall, but when I walked back into the light, the ground itself remembered my name. It shook differently. It carried me differently. The air bent around me like it recognized what I had become. I did not announce my return. Kings do not knock. Storms do not ask permission. I stepped forward, and silence followed like a shadow that obeys only me. The same eyes that mocked me now scatter. The same mouths that laughed now tremble closed. They feel it before they understand it. The man they thought was finished now carries fire in his breath and thunder in his chest. I do not need to roar. My silence is heavier than their noise. I do not need to explain. My presence rewrites the air. When I enter, rooms shrink. When I walk, the ground tightens its grip as if afraid to lose me again. You thought I would come crawling for revenge. I came standing for dominion. I came back, Not to argue, not to shout, not to convince, but to claim. Every scar on my body is now a soldier. Every lesson is now an army. And I do not march alone. I march with the weight of silence, the fury of fire, and the crown of my suffering. You cannot face me the way you once did, because you were still the same, and I am not. You are still a betrayer, but I am a throne walking. You fed off my fall, but now my rise starves you. Because my existence is proof that your knives failed. My presence is proof that your laughter died. My shadow is proof that your power never mattered. I did not come back for peace. I came back for gravity. To bend the room, the street, the kingdom around me. To make every eye that you thought my return would be quiet. You thought I'd slip back into the world like a ghost, desperate for scraps. But ghosts don't bow. Ghosts don't burn. And I came back as fire. This is the reckoning. The day the betrayer meets the blade they created. Every scar you left behind stands beside me now. Every silence you forced into my throat roars louder than your apologies. Every ember you buried has become an inferno. You carved me open once. Look at me now. I am the wound walking. I am the blood turned to steel. I am the silence that learned to scream without sound. You will regret the day you saw me fall, because that was the day you fed a prophecy. That was the day you crowned me in fire. That was the day you created the storm you cannot survive. I don't seek revenge. Revenge is small. Revenge is for men who still want recognition. I want more. I want dominion. I want to turn your whispers into scripture of warning. I want to make your betrayal the cautionary tale fathers tell their sons. Do you feel it now? Your arrogance collapsing. Your comfort trembling. The ground beneath you refusing to hold your weight. It remembers. The earth remembers. It knows who fell. And it knows who rose. And it knows. You no longer have power here. Every scar on me is a soldier. Every silence, a throne. Every betrayal, a blade. And now, those soldiers surround you. Those thrones tower above you. Those blades point at your throat. You wanted me broken. Now you kneel to the consequence you engineered. You created this law, and now you thought my fall was the ending. But it was the foundation. You thought the silence after my collapse was emptiness. It was construction. You thought you buried me, but you planted me. Look at me now. Not crawling, not begging, not explaining. Standing, and every scar on me gleams like a jewel bought with blood. I don't thank you for the betrayal. I don't thank you for the knife. But I recognize the truth. Without your treachery, I would still be asleep. And now, I am awake. Fully. Eternally. The kingdom I built is not made of stone. It is made of nights without comfort. It is made of mornings without applause. It is made of fire, scars, and silence. A throne raised from the bones of every doubt you ever threw at me. I walk through this world crowned in silence. Not the silence of defeat, the silence of power. The silence that commands more than screams ever could. The silence that makes entire rooms bow without a word spoken. You remember the day I fell. You replay it in your mind like a favorite song. But now that memory betrays you. Because every time you remember my fall, you must face my rise. Every time you recall my collapse, you must bow to my standing. Your victory turned into your prison. Your laughter turned into your nightmare. Understand this. I am not what I was. I am not the man you betrayed. I am not the body you left bleeding. I am the blade forged from that betrayal. I am the throne carved from that pain. I am the silence that will haunt you